Hi, I'm Luke. Today on Out of Darts, I've got something I have been dying to show you for months now. I can't quite believe this myself, but Nerf has gone pro. Today we're looking at a blaster with a very familiar silhouette. This is the Nerf Pro Stryfe X. Let's get going. I have been a huge Nerf fan for basically my entire life. I've got a sharpshooter up on the wall along with a manta ray and a crossbow, a few others from my childhood, but suffice it to say, I've always loved the Nerf brand. Over the years, the Nerf blasters have continued to improve, they get better and better, offer more variety, more ammo types, and ultimately that led us to the Barricade, which was the first flywheeler. But things didn't really gain traction until the Nerf Stryfe. My entire modding journey and this business started with the Nerf Stryfe. It's the catalyst that got me back into the hobby and really interested in foam blasters and in the Nerf brand. When I was visiting a cousin about 9 years ago, I picked up a Stryfe that he had in his house and we were playing around, and I was blown away by how good the blaster was compared to my childhood memory of blasters. That started this whole journey into modifying blasters and designing parts and building this business, and my favorite hobby I've ever had. The Stryfe is still one of the most popular blasters out there. There are hundreds of components that you can get for it. A large percentage of our shop is based around this platform, and it has just been a tried and true classic. Just a quick disclaimer, and I want to be really clear on this. For the first time in the history of my entire channel, this product was not only given to me for free to review, but I was also sponsored as part of the Nerf Stryfe X release. As always, my opinions are my own, but I want to be upfront about any potential biases. This is the Nerf Pro Stryfe X. Now, I don't normally do unboxings, but I do like the box art, so I thought I'd bring this up and we would take it apart. Up front, we see that we get 30 darts with it, we get the blaster, we get the rechargeable battery, more on that in a minute. We also get included eye protection, which I think is very important. On the side of the box, we've got a very obvious 14+, meaning they are definitely targeting this at the hobbyist or enthusiast or older teens ultimately, and ultimately adults. Also on the box, we see advertised Pro Performance 150 FPS right out of the box with a LiPo battery, and it's of course semi-auto. I have to say I really do like all of this box art, though I don't tend to keep the boxes around for very long because I like to just get out and start playing. But let's get into this. Now obviously, I've already had another box open. We did receive 2 of these, so we've been able to thoroughly test and play with and really examine and get our thoughts together. As much as unboxing videos can be interesting, I think the idea of reviewing a product directly out of the box is not as thorough as I would like, but I do like that box overall. Inside the box, we will of course find eye protection, a USB-A to USB-C cable, a short dart magazine, and 30 short darts. In this little box here, we've got our battery. Now my battery came charged enough to fire out of the box, but I would recommend charging this when you get it because it's going to perform better that way at full voltage. And then we've got our instruction manual that comes with it. No surprises in here from what I've read, but it's always good to go through everything because please read the manual. And just like that out of the box, we are ready to go. It's a pretty convenient blaster. I was just thinking about how most blaster reviews, this is the point where I run around and find the original AA or AAA or C or D batteries, but here we are, rechargeable battery ready to go. Up front, there's no N-Strike barrel lug. We missed you, Coop. We've got a rail up top and a rail down in front, and you'll notice that both of those are different. They are not quite Picatinny, they're not quite rival. They seem to be something in between, but they're about rival sizing. Personally, with the rail, I would have loved to have seen Picatinny or some other rail format that we already have, like Rival, for instance, but it seems they're intent on setting a new standard for these Pro blasters. That said, it is better than what came with the original stock Stryfe because there's going to be a lot more mount options on this spacing and size. The rev trigger itself is a much needed improvement on the original. The original Stryfe one was just a little bit small. My finger kind of fell off a bit more, whereas this one really feels like it fills up my middle finger as I push that rev trigger. The main firing trigger does have a different feel than the original Stryfe. It is a little bit heavier than the original, but it's for a good reason. I pulled the battery off so I can avoid making noise while showing you this, but the travel distance on this pusher is actually, I'd say it's about 8 to 10 millimeters longer than the original Stryfe. And this is a good thing because it will allow you to get these darts further into the flywheels manually before the flywheels have to pick up that speed, and that should perform better and improve consistency overall. We now have a safety lock down at the bottom. By locking this in place, which I will say is nice and firm, and it stays in place, it's not going anywhere, this will actually lock out your rev trigger. The trigger pull is very snappy and feels very good. One great thing to note is that out of the box, it has no mag safety lock. So you do not have to have the magazine in the blaster in order to insert the magazine. This is great if you want to be out there actually playing and you want to keep the blaster revving while you reinsert a new magazine. That's something I've certainly done plenty of times in an actual game, is drop one mag, throw another in, and just continue firing without dropping the flywheels back down to off mode, essentially. The mag release, similarly, has been redesigned. It is now more of a paddle style mag release instead of the original button, which makes it a lot more comfortable. That said, it's a little too far for my firing hand to reach, so it's definitely going to require you to use your hand that you're grabbing the magazine with. While we're talking about the magazine, let's step aside and look at that, because that is one of the biggest announcements. Now, my hat's off to Hasbro for making this decision, but they are really embracing the hobby here in that this is a very familiar Magwell. At $9.99 for a 2-pack, this is a tremendous value as far as a magazine goes, and I think it'll be a really great option for those getting into the hobby and picking up their first blaster. I'd say the build quality of these is not quite as heavy, but given the price point, it seems like a very good option. Ergonomically, it's kind of amazing how much that little upgrade, that addition of plastic and the sling point adds. It's just, the original cuts into your hand. The patterning on here, it's actually the same as the original, but when we first picked it up, we all thought it was different because it just felt better. But I really like the feel of the grip. The Magwell you'll see in the bottom is, of course, just short dart. It is not flared, and you'll notice that this block has not changed in size overall. So they've just moved the mag release forward and moved the Magwell as far forward as possible, as close to the flywheels. Speaking of the flywheels, we actually have an expanded flywheel cage cover. This is something we've been doing in the hobby for 6 to 8 years probably, and I believe the reason is that they've put higher power motors in here, which you can obviously hear when you rev the blaster up. These larger motors, they shed heat better, they've got more power, and presumably it's a 180 size would be my guess, because that's a common size, versus the standard stock Stryfe is 130 size. Up top, we've got a jam door just like you would expect on a standard Stryfe, and inside we have a very different cage than we've ever seen before. It is still, of course, injection molded, but it has a very nice dart guide, which looks very akin to what others in the hobby have been doing for ages now, and that's going to really help with guiding those darts in properly to make sure that they hit the flywheels nice and straight and improve accuracy. Over on the right side of the blaster, we will see the battery release. Now, this battery release is virtually identical to the one that is at the bottom of the Percy's. It just might even be the same size. Pretty cool. I like it because it always works, it never fails, and it locks positively. So to remove the battery, you just push in and slide, and then pull your battery out. While I've got the battery in my hand, you'll notice a completely empty compartment here. We no longer have the webbing for AA's that you would see in a stock Stryfe, so this is ready to take a battery. Now, this battery is really, really unique. First, from reading on the label, it is an 11.1 volt lithium polymer battery, and it's a 3S1P configuration, meaning it is a standard 3S LiPo inside of here. I would love to look inside at some point. We might do a future video on that. The battery is charged via a USB-C cable, which is included with the blaster. In order to charge it, you simply plug this into your computer or a standard wall outlet that has an adapter, and the light will turn red when it's charging. When it's completed charging, just like now, it will turn off, and that's because this battery is essentially fully charged. Very simple operation, and in case you haven't figured out what's happening here, this is a battery and a charger and safety protection. The battery will stop working and your blaster will stop working when the battery voltage gets too low. This is sort of the holy grail of Nerf modding. And it's the biggest hurdle of our hobby, is having a battery that's safe to use, safe to keep around the house, and is protected. And so the circuitry that's inside here protects you from the battery being mistreated, and charging could not be easier. Plug it into your computer, plug it into your standard phone charger outlet, and you are good to go. The battery charged relatively quickly. However, your mileage may vary depending on the state of charge and how long you've been playing. Super easy to drop in and swap. I have not experienced, there's no play in this. This is really well engineered. It just feels great. I feel like I can hold the whole blaster by that battery. And I also wanted to comment on just how similar these battery doors look compared to some of our products. Kind of hard to show them together, but here I've got a Stryfe that I have an expanded battery door to fit a rechargeable battery and kind of a similar hump. This is not to say Hasbro took anything from us. This is a pretty obvious solution, is to take the existing battery compartment and turn it into a battery. And I love what they've done there. The balance and weight, it is still a very lightweight, portable, small blaster, and it's a ton of fun to play with ultimately. Since this is a protected circuit, you have no need for a LiPo alarm or any other care for this other than don't leave it in a hot environment, and there are warnings on here telling you to avoid just that. I don't have the details yet, but presumably batteries will be available separately for those that want to play a really long day, though I expect the battery life is fairly decent, given that it's a 1000 milliamp battery and similar hobby grade motors to what we've been used to. Up top, we have a really obvious eyewear required thing, and I think that is a great reminder for everyone to be wearing eyewear while you're playing with hobby grade blasters, because these do hit a lot harder. The N-Strike stock point in the back allows for all your classic stocks to work, and it does seem like the tolerance on here is really good. It's a little bit tighter and more firm, which is a nice change from what I remember of a normal Stryfe. Yeah, you can see like this goes on very easy and has a little bit more play, and clearly the engineers decided to tighten up those tolerances to make this a little bit more rigid. This means, of course, that it will work with other brands of stocks and has a very nice feel. I do think that a nice white stock on there or an orange stock is pretty good and kind of gives you a lot more accuracy as you're running across the field. I would be surprised if they didn't offer a stock in the future in the Pro line. That just makes obvious sense. Like all of the blasters from the early N-Strike days, the build quality is excellent. It feels very solid in the hand. There's no excess vibration or anything like that. I have modded dozens, if not probably upwards of 50 Stryfes. I, of course, even featured it in my book, and it's one of the blasters I'm the most familiar with, and I really like seeing this come into a spiritual successor that so directly pulls from modifications and upgrades from the hobby and other improvements over time. Aesthetically, I really like the look of this blaster. Now, I've always liked the Stryfe. It never grew tired on me, but they went with a slightly muted orange, and it's a little bit less bright than the previous one. We've got this nice cut with some gray on there. I think it really makes the blaster look different. We've obviously got the two bumps on the side, which have become pretty classic in the hobby, to be honest. And I think this is kind of it really feels like an homage to the hobby itself. While we're talking about hobby inspiration, it's important to mention that Phil Sweeting, who is the guy who created OFP, who's responsible for so much of what happened in the hobby with Flywheel Cage geometry, actually works at Hasbro and was involved on this project. He's managed by Nick Tino over at Nerf, and their team is definitely very talented. Unfortunately, like a lot of blasters, there's not all the same paint on both sides. Here you've got all the nice logos, but then when you go over to the other side, you don't get that. I do like that we still get the nice gray slash here, but I would have liked to have seen the other logos mirrored on the other side just for consistency. In fact, original Stryfe has that. Not sure what happened there. Let's talk about darts. These darts are the Pro Accustrike half-length darts. That's what they're calling them. I'd probably call them the Accu-halves, or I don't know, Accu-darts. Anyway, we already know that the full-length version of this dart is the best dart that Nerf makes, and it makes sense that making a shorter version is going to fly more accurately. The dart foam is very firm. It feels great. It's comparable to our hobby grade darts that we like now, and they seem to be, the glue is so strong on these darts that this head is never coming off. There's no way, in fact, I think I'm gonna rip Whoa! I left foam behind with the glue. I don't know if they're gonna like seeing that on screen, but I'm gonna do it anyway. One of the most simple tests that we do on camera or with any dart is rip the head off and see how much work it is to remove that head. And ultimately, if it's the foam that's coming off, then you know that the glue is good. And it's really important because when you shoot through these high crush flywheels that are in the Stryfe X, you need quality darts. If you shoot darts that have poor head retention, you're just gonna end up shooting dart heads out of your blaster. Another note on the darts, we did weigh them when we did a 10 dart average, and they're about 0.95 grams each. This is slightly lighter, about 5% lighter than competing darts like the worker darts. It may have something to do with their velocity, where they do fly a little bit farther, but I ultimately think a lot of that is due to the width of the head itself. They're a great dart, and they fire through this blaster remarkably well at a pretty reasonable crush. While we're talking about crush, when we look down this barrel, we'll notice that there is a pretty substantial crush, meaning the distance between the flywheels on this flywheel cage. It's very similar to, say, maybe a Daybreak or one of the OFP cages. We've got some nice concavity on the flywheels, so those flywheels are enveloping the darts. And when you compare that to a stock Stryfe, we're just at a completely different level, because a stock Stryfe not only has a ton more room, but it's just two flat walls where one side tends to warp up because of the shape of the wheel as the dart passes through. We've been testing this for a while, and I was able to get some questions answered directly from the source. It turns out that the flywheels themselves are not printed, but they are injection molded. The team produced them as a single piece of glass-filled nylon, and this helps maximize the dart grip along with the surface texture. This is supposed to also make the wheels really strong, and they definitely sound very consistent and balanced. As far as Nerf is aware, or I'm aware, I've never heard of anybody else doing this, so that's pretty cool. Performance-wise, this is delivering the hits. The box says 150. In our testing, we're getting an average on the high 150s. We're gonna put our 20-shot average up on screen. First, we'll show you the Nerf Pro Accustrike half-length darts, and then we'll show you worker darts just for an unbiased comparison across all of our other videos. Hitting in that 150 to 160 range is just perfect. I mean, off the shelf, I'm blown away that this exists, because it takes a LiPo battery, charger, storage, soldering ability, and a whole mess of parts to upgrade a standard Stryfe to get to this point. And to be able to do this right out of the box with a safe battery is remarkable. If you had told me just a couple years ago, 4 years ago, that this was going to happen, I wouldn't have believed you. It really can't be overstated how much of a difference these two are. And since we have the original Stryfe, and this is literally a stock Stryfe right here, nothing's been done to this except for I did put a screw for the battery door. But we can compare these in the FPS charts as well. Another thing that's really important when you're out there playing is your rev up time. The longer it takes from you hitting the rev trigger to being up at full velocity or full revolutions per minute, the fastest they're gonna go, the longer you have to wait to fire. So we'll try to do this on camera, and I hope my mic will hit it. But listen to two things here. First, it's how long it takes to spin up, and second is how much louder the new blaster is. So here we go. I have to put a mag in it because it's been a little while, you guys. So here we go. And we can look at the audio waveform to get an actual time. We'll try to put that up on screen. Now in comparison. If I had to ballpark it, I'd say it's a little bit under a second and about 2.5 seconds here. I'll be curious how close I am, but we will put the real numbers up on screen. And then noise-wise, they are just completely different. I'll try hold these in the same position here. Stock. Stryfe X. It just sounds mean, which you gotta love. I mean, it feels like a modified upgraded blaster out of the box, which is exactly what it is. Next, I wanted to do something we don't normally do, and that's a range test. And the reason we don't always do it is because blasters are all a little different, but I think considering we're comparing the Stryfe original to the Stryfe X, it's a really important thing. So we're gonna go out and we're gonna do a perfectly level shot, and then we're gonna do maximum angle shot, which is usually about 30 degrees, but we'll play with it to get the maximum range. But I'm just gonna fire a few here. And I have to say, this thing is shooting really, really straight. More on that in a minute. All right, so we are out here outside on a Sunday because there's nobody around, that way nobody sees the blaster. And we have got a 100-foot tape measure set up. We're gonna do 15 shots flat, and then we're gonna do 15 shots angled as about 30 degrees to see if we can get the best range possible. So we're starting with the 15 shots out of the Stryfe stock. This is level as I can make it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 13, 14, 15. Now we're gonna switch to the Stryfe X, 15 level shots. So now I'm gonna do angled shot, about like that. Next, I want to talk about accuracy. With the included Pro Accustrike half lengths, this thing is shooting really, really well. And part of that is the flywheel cage setup. You've got nothing interfering with the muzzle. The actual barrel itself is now straight instead of flared and turned. It used to be rifled on the original Stryfe, so if a dart did ever hit the sides, it actually caused more issues than less. But all that said, the blaster is shooting and performing really, really well. With the high performance and solid accuracy, it seems only natural that this is going to be popular at competitive games. I can't wait to get this out into an actual game day now that I'm allowed to share it. We haven't been able to show this to anybody, of course. Even my team here at the warehouse hasn't seen it, aside from Perry, who's under NDA as well. In November of last year, Nerf teased Nerf Ball, and we haven't heard a lot since. But with the release of the Stryfe X, I'll let you connect the dots, but let's just say it's going to be a very exciting year. Since this project has been top secret, I haven't had the opportunity to take this out to an actual game. But that being said, it's an upgraded Stryfe. It's a really solid Stryfe. It's hard to imagine anything not feeling good. The Stryfe is still remarkably popular at all of the events I go to. We always see tons of them, so I don't expect any surprises. I did get the opportunity to play a little mini warehouse battle 1v1 with my video producer Perry, so that was super cool. It feels exactly like you expect it to. It's responsive, it's snappy, it shoots really straight. You can cycle through that trigger pretty darn fast, and it's just solid. I really only have two complaints with the blaster. The first is that at the end of the day, it's a Stryfe, so it really plays on that nostalgia, and I don't blame them for that. I think it's really great to take your most popular flywheel platform and just make it better in every way. But I would like to see in the future a dedicated blaster too, that's kind of built from the ground up. My other actual gripe though is that I would have loved to have seen a flared Magwell down here. The Magwell is just like the standard stock Stryfe Magwell in that it just goes straight in, and it can be a little bit difficult to hit that mark, and it's going to take me some extra practice getting used to that. I would have loved to have seen a flared Magwell. As many of you know, we in the hobby, of course, print Magwells that we put onto the Stryfe. That way, when you're putting that magazine, you have a little bit of an extra guide to get that magazine in there without having to be quite as good on the muscle memory. Here, you've got to be pretty accurate. It's a relatively minor gripe because a lot of blasters don't have it, and I suspect the reason for that is both the space in here and the additional part and assembly it would take to have that flared Magwell. One other small minor complaint is that mag release. I normally would like to use my firing hand to actually activate that. This is going to have to require here. That's something that I'm definitely going to design a part and fix myself so that I can do that. Whereas like the stock Stryfe, because of the placement, you could do that already. So it's a kind of a step back in that regard. The obvious thing that we did when we got this is to look at what else could we do to it. There aren't a huge number of upgrades or changes I would make to the blaster. It is really a powerhouse out of the box, and replacing, say, the motor and flywheel cage just doesn't make a lot of sense unless you're trying to go above that sort of super stock range. In fact, at 160 on the high end, it might actually be a little hot for some super stock games. So that's going to depend on where you're playing and what you're doing. The Nerf Pro Stryfe X is shipping on 10/15. That's October 15th. However, it's available for pre-sale starting today. We'll put all the links down in the description below. The Nerf Pro Stryfe X comes in at $129.99. That includes a magazine and 30 of the half darts. The magazines come in a 2-pack for $9.99, which to me seems like a tremendous value. Lastly, the dart refills themselves are a 120 pack and they come in at $17.99. So that's also extremely competitive with everything we've got now. It's gonna be great to have another option out there on shelves available to purchase. Not all of the options are gonna be available for pre-order at the launch date, but they'll be available later in the year. Thank you so much for watching. The hobby keeps looking for a Stryfe killer, and I think it's pretty clear to see now that the Stryfe is here to stay. And it's my hope that we'll have both available, entry level for kids and the upgraded powerhouse competitive blaster platform. I'm also really looking forward to seeing what first-party support for half darts looks like. Having another competitor in the space that's making blasters for our hobby, for us, and for our gameplay style is nothing short of monumental in the hobby. And it's probably the biggest shift that's happened in years. I want to thank Nerf for sponsoring this video, and I am excited to see what comes next. Lots more to come. Until next time, I'm out of darts. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. It always helps us out. I know every channel is always saying that. We will have a follow-up video to this where we tear down and talk about the internals and just look at everything they changed inside as well. That's more for the hobby enthusiast, but we think you'll like it.